Hi everyone. So let's talk about URL routing in this demo. And by the way, for those of you who watched the MVC demo already, I was using my local copy and the URLs were pretty cluttered. Meanwhile, I got a domain and the WebDNACodeSparker website is there, and the demo site is just the directory in there. And once you're in this demo site, the URLs are much cleaner. You see the controller name and the method name, just simple stuff. So it makes it easier to follow along. Rather than remake those videos, I think I'll just plow forward and I'm sure you'll be able to figure it out. So let's see, URL routing. So we already talked about the fact that in the MVC video that by default, the part of your URL after the domain, and in this case for this Appleseas demo website, the domain is as if all of that, the real domain plus the folder that this mini site lives in. So anyway, and you can configure in your configuration, you're going to set up what to look for, what part ends the main part of the URL that leads to the directory, whether that's the root or a folder in your site or whatever. Anyway, you set that up so that the code knows to look for that, and then everything after that it knows is the starting of the URL segments that dictate which controller and which function within the controller, which I'm calling a method, to load. So in this case, we're loading by default the food controller and the recipes method or recipes function inside that controller. So we already covered that in MVC demo video, excuse me, and now I want to show you the custom routing. So there's a file in your system folder. Here we go. Custom routing remote production. And we're going to cover environments later in another video, but see there's two of these. There's WCS custom routing remote production and WCS custom routing local development. In another video, I'll show you that you can have different configurations for different environments, one for your development server, one for your remote production server. You can even have one, as many as you want, one for testing, whatever. So for now, we're going to be working in this remote production one because that's the one that's going to be kicking in when we work on the live site, okay, at this domain in this folder. So if we were to go to menu link, it loads the food controller and the menu method. Okay, we covered that in MVC. If we go to recipes, same thing, except for instead of the menu controller, it loads the recipes controller. You can see right there. All right, now if we were to go to recipes and then this link, you can see at the bottom down here, watch. See, it says food controller recipes method. Seasonal meal is the next URL segment, which comes in as one of the parameters, one of the variables that comes into the controller. And it's just a switch case that says if it's seasonal meal, then load this particular block within the recipes block within the food controller. All right, and that's what this is. If I click the link, that's what we see here. Okay, but watch this. If we do random meal, oh, whoops, hang on a second. Let's go into here and turn this off. This is what I'm about to demonstrate. Using fetch, don't laugh, it's old, I've just had it for ages. Okay, so we're going to come into the config folder on the remote server and update this and watch. There. So if we go to, like I just did, recipes, random meal, it shows this code. Okay, and that's from here. This controller, find random. Here we go. The menu controller, the random meal in the next segment. And I don't want that one. I want this one. Recipes, random, right? recipes random. Okay, that's where we are now. So normally it loads this code. The page title is sample random meal. That's what's up there now. Trying to demonstrate that by hovering. And it's not working. There we go. Sample random Applebee's meal. That's because of this variable right here. All right, and then we build up this variable, which is the unique content for the page load, which is just an H4, the page title, which was that we just showed you, plus this span. Hover over dish to see the ingredients. That's right here. This and this. And now the rest of this code here comes from this. This is a call to the model where we do stuff. Models is where you do stuff in this framework. And in this case, code block that fires in this model, which just again means another file, another block of code, does what the variables named and their values say they do. Get the random meal and stick the results in an unordered list. Okay, so that code right here, the display, the HTML that looks like that, comes from this call to this function. And this function is defined in the food model, which is this file here. And, when you get to download the framework package and look at the source, you can play with all this and look at these files carefully. So anyway, this is the block of code that fires basically. And this gets fed into the view file when we load this URL. Okay, but I want to show you in this demo that the URL's in your total control. All right. So what if the developer of your site, or you presumably, had some fancy code inside the randomizer? I'm calling as if it was fancy, the randomizer function, which determines a meal at random. Okay. And sometimes you had to work on it, and when you were working on it, it was down for the day or down for the hour, and you wanted the people that come to your website to see that fact, that it was just down for now and they should come back later. Okay, so what you might want to do is set up a custom URL routing algorithm that looks for random anything, random meal, either random meal or random whatever you want, in this part of the URL segment, and then redirects to a different block of code. So let's do that. Custom routing remote, and you set up your custom routes in this file, which is the file that's named like this, custom, WCS custom routing underscore the environment that you're using, which is going to be determined in your config file. And in here, there's a lot of comments to you, the developer, which just explains how these work and how to use them. And here's a more complicated example, some random notes to you. And then it's very simple. You get down to the code that actually is going to be executing. And here's where you set up your default controllers and methods and what to do in case the controller or method asked for is not even found at all. That's where you set these up. Like, for example, if the user comes into this website, and there's just nonsense up here, what's it load? Instead of nothing, it loads something. And what does it load? The default controller, which is food, and the default method I named default method. And if it's missing, then it'll load what was set right here, so it's still food, and the 404 method is the same method that was set right here. So we're still on the food controller default method in both cases, in the way I've set this up, but you can do what you like. And that's why we see this. So it's nice and friendly. You don't get any page not found ugly errors. All right, so now back to our example. In case you're working on your randomizer function and you want this URL to not display this stuff because it's broken while you work on it, and instead you want to just display a message that's under maintenance, then you could set up a custom URL, and you'll learn how to do this by reading up above. But here's an example. This says WCS custom route 2, and you just number these, increment them, or whatever you want really, as long as it starts with WCS underscore custom route underscore, and I just made these 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, etc., as needed. Look for an URL. Everything on the left side of the equal sign is going to try to match your URL. So this custom route right here on line 119 of this file says look for an URL, after the domain part, after what you set up to effectively be your domain, like that, or the domain plus the folder that this mini site lives in, if you have that. Then look for the string food. You see that right there. And then look for, and this is grep. This is really flexible. You can use grep in here. And for those of you that don't know what grep is, it just means wildcards or variables. So if you can learn about this by studying and look up above here for notes. But this bit of grep says, look for any characters that are alphanumeric, anything that's a lowercase or uppercase letter from the English language, or any number from 0 to 9, or an underscore, or a hyphen, and then any number of those characters. So it could be one letter W, or 4 letter T's, or TZQ128P. Anything alphanumeric is going to be in the next segment after food. So this case, this applies. Recipes is an alphanumeric sequence of alphanumeric characters, followed by slash, and there, random meal. Okay, so now this one is going to match this URL. And if it does match, and which it will now since I removed that Z, then reroute this URL to stick on this after the domain. And again, in my example, the domain has been configured to be all of that. So it's going to replace what comes after that, meaning that is going to be replaced by this. So it's if the person, in other words, with this custom routing rule right here, then the user comes into this URL, but the code that fires and causes HTML to be displayed is going to be that code as if the user had actually typed that in their URL at the domain, meaning from there on, as if they typed all this blah 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 wc demo /info/randomizer under maintenance. Okay, so you may have this set up for yourself because you work on your randomizer function every other week, and every time you're not working on it, you just make it so that this routing rule will not find the URL at all by just putting something in there like nonsense like that. And then when you do want it to fire, this custom routing rule, while you are working on your randomizer function, you would just make it the legitimate URL that will match. Okay, so now let's see what happens. Oh, and by the way, this is more grep. /1 means whatever was found inside these parentheses, stick it right here. So it's real convenient. It means take this URL that has food /whatever/random meal in it and make it reroute to as if the user typed info/randomizer under maintenance /whatever. In this case, it's recipes. Right? That's the second part of the URL. The part after food. See the part after food? It's a wildcard. It can be any alphanumeric characters. And in this case, it's the word recipes. So the URL is going to be routed to info randomizer under maintenance /recipes. So let's try it. I already saved this, and I'm going to upload it to the server like that. Make sure I'm in the right place. I am. Okay, reload this URL. We apologize for the inconvenience. We're sorry, but our randomizer is down for the day. Our tech says it should be back up by tomorrow morning. And then I just stuck this in your, for your debug purposes. Control parameter 1 equals recipes, which means the third segment of the URL. And remember, we said the third segment is 1, 2, 3, right here. So this /1, it worked. It got replaced with what was the second segment in the original URL. So that's it. The user basically with this custom routing rule right here has the inability, they're not able to come to the URL that is with /food /whatever/random meal in it. They can't. They try to come here, it doesn't go there. Instead it goes where you tell it to. And if you want to verify all this, then when you get these files in the source code and you download it, go ahead and open up your info controller and look for the method, the block that's named that, randomizer under maintenance. Here I'm going to go ahead and copy that.